Welcome to another mastermind session, virtual mastermind session for dualpreneurs. Dualpreneurs are wonderful side hustle superheroes. We have our full-time or part-time job, but we are brilliant to understand multiple streams of income and having those side hustles, side entrepreneur ventures, or side enterprises. Especially right now with the pandemic, we understand why it's so important to be a dualpreneur, because some of us are not working. And if we don't work, we don't get paid. If we don't have money, we don't eat. So it's very important to have that side hustle that can bring forth another stream of income. We always talk about that dual engine income. You know, now you understand what I'm talking about. So if one of those engines conk out, you still can keep afloat with the other income. So we are excited to have multiple people come into the room. Just make sure you are muted, and we are going to get started. I have a wonderful guest. Hey, have you ever wondered how you can get more exposure for your business, get more people to understand who you are, what you have, what problem you solve? Well, I was able to do that by getting closer to the media, getting media's attention, getting them to really see who I was, and then seeking me out for advice, and I became one of the leaders. But how did I do that? No, I didn't wake up and say, Madam Money, I'm just going to be on TV. I invested, and I decided to contact this wonderful, beautiful lady that I was stalking on social media when I saw Roland Martin. I saw her on Roland Martin, and not only was she a beauty, she was smart. And I was like, oh my God, I need to follow her because she's where I want to be when I grow up. And she had these awesome coaching opportunities to get in front of the media. And she had this wonderful, wonderful conference that I went to. And it was absolutely awesome. It was several days and it was intense. But I got in front of people that I would not have normally. That's how I got on Al Jazeera. That's Dr. Avis's fault. That's how I got on WHUR as a regular. That's Dr. Avis's fault. She had the producers there at the event, and all I had to do was just make myself known, but she gave me the skills, and I wanted to thank you, one, because I still use everything that I learned at that conference today, especially pitching to the media. And I just talked about that offline, that I was pitching the financial impact of the coronavirus as well as the pandemic. And before it was a pandemic, I was like, the unofficial pandemic is going to have an impact on our finances, and this is how you prepare. I pitched it, but no one took me serious at that time. But like you said, as soon as the markets start hitting, they knew who to call, and they started calling me. So that was really awesome. And thank you again for that. So of course, I know that I have a lot of friends who also are experts in their field. They want to learn how to get attracted or get media to see them and be attractive for media, and how to pitch media. And who else would I have to come on here but the pitch perfect expert, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeever. Thank you, Dr. Avis, for joining us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And as you can see, we have a full house. People are still coming in. So hello, hello, hello to everyone. Everyone, I need you to do me a favor and smile. We're going to say cheese for the camera. Yeah, I'm going to do it. So not on me. Let's see. Cheese for the camera. Everybody smile. Cheese. We're cute. Okay. It's one of those selfies. That's a virtual selfie.
Gotta get our poses in, you know.
Cheese. So, Dr. Avis, one, I want you to introduce yourself and then go into the tips of how we can pitch perfect to media for more exposure for our businesses. What do we need to know? What are some strategies? And then how can we learn more? Because we have a limited time here, but there is a way that you're offering that we can learn more while we're quarantined. So
yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me and introducing me to your beautiful and cute community. I'm so excited to be here. And, you know, it is, I have to say right now, It is really the prime time. I would say a once in a lifetime opportunity to make the most of the media right now. Because if you take a look at the situation, the unfortunate situation that we're in right now with regards to facing this pandemic, it is forcing literally millions of people to be home. Like, they're home. So we're not traveling. We're not in restaurants. We're not watching movies, outside of the house. We are in home. And what are we doing when we're at our houses? We're consuming media. Okay, we're consuming more media now than ever. Television, radio, podcasts, publications, reading all sorts of different publications. So if ever there was a time to take advantage of the opportunity to get your business literally in front of millions of people, this is the time to do it. You literally have a captive audience. So I'm super excited to be able to talk with you about this today. Let's see, should I just start with just some foundational elements of what you need to have in place? I guess I will.
Yes,
okay.
yes, please go ahead. All
right, cool. I just didn't want to go on and on and on and on. That's one media thing. When you are on hits, for example, particularly in television, but radio, any of that, it's important that as a guest, you don't go on and on and on and on. You let the host. Okay. All right. So in terms of foundational things, though, I think it's very critical that you have in place before you even start the pitching process, because I think there are some things that you have to be ready. Like, for example, Madam Money, who I like to call her, she got into the media in a very prepared state. I'm so glad that she was able to make the most out of the Master of the Media Summit, but she came there with certain basic assets in place, such that when she had the information that she needed to be able to implement, it was very easy for her to get in front of the right people, present herself correctly, and get a yes, because she had her stuff in order before she got there, okay? So let's talk a little bit about that, and then I'll give you some tips about how to really go through that process, okay? Things that you have to have in place is you have to have what I call a mediagenic brand, okay? What I mean by that, you have to have in place some level of presence on the internet, hopefully a website, a landing page, something where someone can find out more about you. Even if it's just like a business page on Facebook or your LinkedIn page, it's best if you have some level of a website, because the reality is producers, they will likely do their due diligence. If you're completely unknown quantity, they'll want to sort of research you a little bit, okay? So make sure that, for example, if someone Googles you, something will come up, and that something will be a good thing. Okay. Okay. So Google yourself first to see what's out there, and make sure that you have good things that will come up. And that might take some pre-work to populate the site with good things, so that will be some of the first things that'll come up for you, right? Secondly, I would say that you also need to own your expertise and understand how to communicate it powerfully and memorably. You notice how I said Madam Money here? I mean, that is just a brilliant way to coin your expertise in a very powerful and memorable and catchy way. And I remember how we met. You also, not only were you doing your amazing brunch, but she also had an incredible book that also had a very catchy, memorable, humorous title. It was a title that stuck with you. Wasn't it like the financial laws of fornication or something like that?
Financial fornication.
Financial fornication. I knew fornication was in there, and I knew financial was in there. Okay. It got my attention. Years later, I still remember. Okay. That type of thing is going to get the attention of producers. So if you haven't written a book, don't feel bad. You don't have to have a book finished, but it's good if you have some ways that you can establish and present your expertise. Because here's the bottom line. For the gatekeepers, who are typically the producers if we're talking about television or radio, or they're the editors if we're talking about getting published in a newspaper or something like that, they only want to present to their audience people who they are confident know what the heck they're talking about. Can I get an amen on that? Okay. Amen. They want to be, yes. And it's because it's their reputation on the line, right? If they put someone on their platform that gives bad information. So they want to ensure and feel very confident that they have an expert that they are allowing onto their platform. I think of the media in the way that we're discussing it, earned media versus social media, as a space where there's like, you can imagine like a little velvet rope when you're trying to get into an exclusive club, right? And some people, they open the velvet rope for, and others, they have to stay in line, right? And so those people that they open the velvet rope for are people who they can confidently believe is an expert in what they do. Now, I know Madam Money don't fool around. She surrounds herself with smart women. She surrounds herself with experts. So I know each and every one of you that's listening to me tonight, you're all experts. But what I want you to know is that you have to be okay with that term, beyond okay. You have to be comfortable with that term. You have to be confident in that term. You have to be able to call yourself an expert without stuttering. Do you hear me? Because if you don't believe you're an expert, you're never going to be able to convince anyone else that you are.
I need to chime in on there. That was my first thing when I went to your conference, that even in my first book, I have to rewrite my book because it's still in there. Mm-hmm. I say that I'm not an expert, but such and such. And mm-hmm. when you told us you are an expert, because people aren't looking for people who kind of sort of know what they're talking about. They're looking, they're Googling and they're searching money expert, financial expert. So if you do not come up in that realm because you are afraid to call yourself an expert, you're not going to come up in their search. That's how I got with Essence. I asked them, how did you find me? They said, we Googled money expert and you came up. So that is very important. That was more valuable than almost anything else. Okay, the top 5 valuable.
That is awesome. I'm so excited to hear that, because and I really, honestly, let me just keep it real. I just, scream that off the rooftops, especially for sisters, because here's what I know about us. We are amazing at what we do. We are whip smart. We typically do 10 times the work for half the recognition. And so we have that, we know what we're doing. We are experts, but 9 times out of 10, you will have someone who has half your expertise, half your experience, half your ability, swoop in and get all the shine. And so I am really, it's kind of like, I feel like Don Quixote against the, windmills. I will continue to fight that battle until all of us own confidently and proudly our expertise, and not feel like we're being, arrogant when we say that. No, you're being factual. Okay. I say that in the sense of, I'm an AKA, and one of my favorite steps that we used to have back in the day when I was in college, the sort of, the line that really hit me and struck me. And it's a line that I still hold on to today when I'm talking with women about owning their expertise, is this simple phrase: I'm not conceited, I'm just convinced. Okay. You have to be convinced that you are an expert. You have to hold it strongly. And so be convinced about that. And then secondly, be able to, in essence, quantify that. So what I mean by that is be able to figure out the different ways that you personify expertise. That can come in many different packages. It could be that you have a degree in your area of expertise, but that's not the only way to be considered an expert. If you have experience, many years of experience doing something, then you can be an expert in that thing, even if you've never gone to school for it in one day. If you've written a book, for example, that automatically is perceived as something that elevates you to expert status. Even if it's not necessarily a book, if you've gotten published, for example, an op-ed, that is something that oftentimes opens doors. So it doesn't have to be as long as a book, but you've been able to demonstrate your mastery of a subject area by getting it published somewhere. That oftentimes is able to let other people in the media really read your thoughts on something and be able to assess how well you master that subject area. If you have a unique experience. So when I'm meaning this different, when I say it this time, it's a little bit different than if you have experience doing something for many years. If you have a unique experience in the sense that, say, for example, you were, in China when the coronavirus was discovered, for example. You have a unique experience because not that many people were there when that happened. So if you want to be able to talk about that experience, you have a unique perspective because no one else experienced that. Very few other people, Americans, experienced that. So, there are different ways that you can sort of quantify your expertise, but understand however you perceive it, you need to be able to sort of relay that as you're positioning yourself to be able to be taken seriously as someone who can be picked up by the media. So should I just give a few more tips?
Oh, yes. Keep going. You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Right,
one thing I did want to say, and thank you for pausing like that, so
Yeah.
that people understand this. One of the things that I learned is when you are, doing an interview, one, write down your talking points, but talk in sound bites. That's
Yes.
one thing that I had to learn the hard way, because I was on the radio, but I would ramble on and on and on, and there was no stop. And the producer said, Tara, you got to learn how to talk in sound bites, because we need to be able to snap 5-second, 10-second quote so we can, use it for a future thing or to promote something. But you also need to be very concise in what you're saying, so that, because if I have a 3-minute segment, I can't talk for 3 minutes.
Right. That's an excellent point. And here's, and sort of related to that, the reason why that's so important is in addition to what you just said, is because quite frankly, most segments are only about 3 minutes, if that long. The media is great in that it gives you exposure, but in most situations, they are short hits, especially if we're talking about television. They tend to be very short hits. So you need to come into that situation knowing the message that you want to relay. And you need to be prepared to relay it in a very concise, bite-sized, memorable method, right? The sound bites, right? And if you see, I hate to use this example, Lord have mercy, but 45 is really good at sound bites, okay? He's really good at sound bites. There is a reason why he manipulates the media so well. It's because he understands this concept. And he even understands the concept of, if I say something really crazy off the chain, it's going to be repeated multiple times. Even if I'm being berated by it, people are going to reference what I just said and then talk about me more. And so that one media hit begets more media and begets more media. So it's about not only sort of being strategic and specific and concise in what you're saying. It's also, if you really want to sort of get a carry-on effect, is to say something that's powerful. It's to say something that's potentially controversial, right? It's to say something that's particularly memorable, and that way it really gets people's attention. I'll give you one other example with that. And I was kind of personally a little disappointed with this. So for example, last night, and I'm just saying this generally speaking, my area of expertise aside from media is politics. And that's really how I got introduced to media and writing and speaking and appearing on television around political commentary. And one thing that is consistent is that it's not just Trump. Quite frankly, the Republican Party is just much better at messaging than the Democratic Party. And an example that I will give you is that, for example, last night, Joe Biden was on the 11 o'clock show on MSNBC with Brian Williams. And he had a very, very long, it was an unusually long interview with him. And they talked about a whole lot of different things. Now, you might recall yesterday was also the day that they had the very, very controversial press conference at the White House, where Donald Trump finally admitted that on the low end, they expect anywhere from 100 to 240,000 people in America to die as a result of this pandemic. Biden was asked about that, and he was asked about a lot of the things, including about what would happen with the Democratic convention. Then I noticed today that out of all the things that he talked about, the only thing that got picked up, for example, this morning by the Washington Post was the news that the Democratic convention might be delayed or canceled. And I don't blame the Washington Post for that. I really blame his communication staff, quite frankly, for not arming him with better, more memorable, more harsh, more controversial even talking points that would have allowed him to get greater media attention, that would have carried him further down the line with other media opportunities. If you're being interviewed on the very same day as something that big and that controversial is being discussed, and you're running against this guy in November, and the most interesting thing that you can say is that you might not have a convention in July, then that tells me, once again, that's a messaging failure. So you have to make sure that your appearances are memorable, and that takes some forethought. It takes some frankly, some courage to not only operate in the safe zone, but to operate in a place that shows not only mastery of the subject, but passion and the ability to really relay information in a way that makes people really think about their, make people think about the issues perhaps in a little bit different way. That is what makes you memorable, not just saying everything that everybody else says.
I absolutely agree. And one of the things to help us to prepare, that helps me to prepare, is that, one, you have to understand what's going on. For example, yes. I had no desire to do a live this evening, but yesterday I've been noticing there's a lot of miscommunication about who is going to get the stimulus package, yes. Right? So one, and then in my mind, I talk myself out of things. I'm thinking people know how much they're going to get. It's all over the news, how they're going to get it. But the reality is there's a lot of people that just don't. They don't know how they're going to get the money, who's going to get the money, when they're going to get the money, how, all of that. And so because I have identified that, of course, now I'm going to do a live to talk about that, because that is the theme that's going on. And so I'm going to stream it out. I'm going to post it. I'm going to put it in something that's going to give me SEO. So when people start searching and producers search for that, I at least come up in their feed. So that's very important, that you understand what's going on and how it's relative. For example, Jan, she has a wear for concealed weapons. Mm-hmm. She has different clothing design, everything for concealed weapon. I just love her. I love her whole setup there, right? I just need to get a concealed weapon so I can buy her stuff, right? So, but there's a lot of people right now that is very scared, and they're like, oh, I need to get my firearms. I need to stack up on toilet paper and firearms. I need to do that. Now, she can really leverage that, because, you can't walk around with an arm. She can, concealed weapon. She can be with the government right now with concealed and all of that stuff. There's so many things that she can do. And if she keeps her ear to what's going on, even with NRA, even with what's going on with the underground talk and all of that stuff, there's a lot of people that will go to her website and purchase her stuff.
That's my God. Now is the perfect time for that, because, it really struck me when this thing first started. I don't know if anybody else on here is like zombie movie fans, but I'm a huge zombie movie fan. And I'm like, this whole situation reminds me of a zombie movie. I'm like, I need some weapons, because ain't nobody coming in my house and take my food. That's the first thing I thought. I hope I'm not the only one that thought that, but it definitely crossed my mind. Okay.
I'm not a zombie movie fan, but I did think about that. And luckily my grandfather is heavily armed, and like, y'all not coming up in here, getting me sick, and you ain't taking my food. Wow.
There you go. We all have to be prepared. And so, I think this is a window of opportunity. This, one of the things I like to sort of emphasize with my clients is that when in the midst of crisis, there's always opportunity. So really what it requires is, just like in the media, for example, you have to figure out what hook are you going to use to get the attention of the producers, of the editors, and oftentimes that requires you connecting it to a recent event, or to something that's hot or interesting in the broader culture at that moment. But the same thing is true for sales, quite frankly. Like, this is a moment where you need to figure out, how is it that what I do relates to what's happening outside, and how can I position what I have to offer as a need? To me, one could say that you could definitely lean into this issue of safety, because right now, that is a buying trigger, right? Safety, desire for safety. Right now, that is heightened in this moment. So that particular product, I think, would go well. And I also think, quite frankly, that if she could possibly pitch to do like a mini fashion show of concealed garments, garments that make you look fly, but you'll stay safe. And I could see that like on a morning television show. I could see that on a Good Morning Washington or on a Fox 5.
Yeah,
So, this is the moment for something
she's in
like
the
that.
Atlanta area, I believe. And
Okay.
then but she also posted that you can wear it regardless of being armed or not. So it's fashion
wonderful.
and it's beautiful. She has this one garment that I just need to get, whether I have a concealed or not, because it's just so fashionable. And I just love her dresses, her shirts, her pants. She also have this little garment that you can wear around your waist. I want it to really suck in my gut. But it's really to conceal, but I think I might get
Hey, two birds, one stone. I'll take it.
I'm gonna gain like 20 pounds just from the quarantine. So, I gotta
We're all happy, y'all. Oh my God. But see, honestly, because I'm thinking visual. So that something like that, I think I think that would be a good basis to pitch for her local morning television, for example. I think she could likely get in there, have that fashion, have a little brief fashion show, because they like to have something like that every now and then. And even though it relates to the issue, here's the thing: you don't need to feel like everything that the media covers has to be quote unquote doom and gloom related to this pandemic. It's a tragic situation. It is a scary situation, no doubt about it. But they can't have that on 24/7. I mean, just as many people watch local broadcast news as they do cable news, if not more. And so it's really about taking advantage of the opportunity for example, in the broadcast space where it is less quote unquote news 24/7 all day, all the time, but also they really have opportunities there where you can get segments on that allows you to talk about your expertise, that allows you to talk about your business in a way that is much more easily accessible than getting access to a network station to do that. So, and oftentimes it's also a stepping stone up to the national opportunity. So I would definitely encourage her to do that as a way to let people see more of what she has to offer. Because right now, no doubt about it, I'm sure that the demand for that particular product is going to be through the roof.
Absolutely. And can you share one more tip and then we'll wrap it up and let us know how we can learn more of what we really need to learn from you?
Yeah. So the first tip that I'll have, and this was a great idea that you just mentioned, because you mentioned you put your piece out there and people can find you. Here's the thing: producers and editors, but especially producers, are on Twitter all the time, and oftentimes they get story ideas from Twitter. So I love the idea of publishing is a very low hanging fruit in terms of getting access to the media. There are some platforms that you can go on yourself and just publish pretty much straight to the platform with no gatekeeper at all. Like Medium, for example, is a very well-respected platform, but there's no gatekeeper. And then there are other platforms where there is a gatekeeper, but you can easily insert your piece, and after it's reviewed, they'll let it go right through, like a place like Blavity, for example. So there are places like that you can submit, and then you can amplify it yourself on Twitter and have your network amplify it for you. And use that as a way to sort of get into the sites of producers who are looking for people with that expertise. At worst case scenario, it is helping to, once again, establish yourself as an expert, such that when you begin to sort of pitch more aggressively, you do have things that pre-exist there that allows them to be able to, when they do their due diligence, be able to get more, evidence of your expert status, which will help them come to that yes a little bit easier.
Now, what was the first website that you mentioned before Blavity?
Medium.
Medium.
So yeah, so I don't know if you published on that yet, but Medium is a very, very, very well-respected platform. You have everything from political leaders publishing on there, to everyday sort of moms or experts in a variety of different. It's a platform that a lot of different people use, but it's a very, very, very well respected platform, right? And now they've even broadened out to have different areas of Medium that has specific foci. So for example, Zora is an offshoot of, well, I guess I wouldn't call it an offshoot. I would say maybe it's under the Medium umbrella. It is a separate platform, but it's under the media umbrella. And Vanessa DeLuca, who was the former editor-in-chief of Essence magazine, is now the editor of Zora magazine. So with Zora, you do have to pitch, but what's beautiful about Zora is it is specifically an opportunity. They are specifically a platform that focuses exclusively on issues of concern to women of color. So if you know that you want to talk about issues that are particularly important to women of color, Zora is a great place to get published, and it's really expected. So you can just go to, for example, the overarching one, Medium. It's spelled like the size medium, medium.com, and you can go on there. You can see the actual sort of different publication opportunities. And if you become a regular publisher to publish, well, a regular contributor to Medium, you can actually get paid based on how popular your pieces are. They will give you a portion of the revenue that they receive so that you can actually use it as an income generating vehicle. I have a couple of my clients have been able to do that. So I definitely would suggest that that's a good sort of initial place for people to start sort of making a footprint, or really getting their footprint in the media and creating a little bit of a reputation for themselves and their expertise, is that publication route, because particularly with Medium, it's a very, very low barrier of entry, but at the same time, it's also a very well-respected place.
That's awesome. So I know we want more. Let's see. It says, do you know if you can use previously published pieces of on Medium?
You can. That's a very good question, because a lot of places do not like that. So for example, I also mentioned Blavity as an example. Blavity only accepts content that's never been published anywhere else first. Okay. So for example, you could, if you have pieces that have already been published, like for example, on your own blog, you can go and publish them on Medium tomorrow. You could publish 5, 6, 7, how many of you want. You just go cut and paste and put them there, and they could be on Medium. You're welcome. But when you write something in the future, say that you want to try to get published on Blavity, what I would suggest is that you submit it to Blavity first. You have their editors review it. They're normally super quick. Their yeses usually come within the same day, depending upon when you submit it, though knowing that a lot of their staff is on the West Coast, so you can think about the time difference there. But say that after it's published on Blavity, if you do, for whatever reason, want to also republish the same piece on Medium, you can, but you just would have to do it in have Blavity go first. And then my suggestion is, if you do republish it someplace else, like a Medium, or even like on LinkedIn, for example, which a lot of us like to do just for professional reasons, that under the title, you have like a little subtitle area where you say, as first appearing in Blavity, for example. So you give Blavity credit as being the original source of that document.
And that's the same with Black Enterprise. If I'm going to put something there, it has to be original content. So I'll, have it on Black Enterprise first, and then I'll syndicate it on my blog or someplace else.
Yep.
As well. So that's great. We're going to open it up to those that are in the mastermind right now. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask Dr. Avis some questions if you have some questions. So we will open it up. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Avis? This is the time to get it. I'm just saying.
Sorry, I'm trying to plug in my phone. Yes.
I have a question. This is Patrina. First, I want to say to Tara, thank you very much for doing this. And to Dr. Avis, thank you so much for your information.
Sure.
My question is, do you have any sample templates for pitching? Like, how long should it be? What sort of information that they're looking for? Do we put our whole bio in there? Can you give any tips on that from a pitching electronically perspective?
Yeah. So in fact, I'm having an entire masterclass on this next week. And you can get more information at perfectmediapitch.com. And over the course of that week, I'll be walking people through the process of actually putting together a pitch. But to answer your question, yes, you do have to have what I call, and this is something we'll be going through in the masterclass, a media bio. So that's like a very, very short
Say it again now.
Short version of your bio. Some people just, oh my God, I'm like, no. Short version of your bio that you want to put at the bottom of the pitch. And what the purpose of that is, once again, to fortify your expertise. Because as I mentioned at the very beginning, this is like, this right here is so important that you get. They want to make sure that they are only allowing experts on their platform. So you want to save like your most bad of bad sort of areas of accomplishments as things that you mention in that media bio. And if you have a website to link to, or if you have a book to link to, you can put that in your media bio. But it shouldn't be, a page or even a half a page long. I'm talking, 3 sentences long. Really, it needs to be short and tight, but very impressive.
Awesome. Any other questions that you have?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Patrina is awesome. She has written a couple books as well. She's in the financial space, so
Wonderful.
She's doing some major things up in the New England where it's probably still snowing. I like the snow, so it's okay. Holly, do you have a question?
I do. So my question is, earlier you mentioned that a lot of producers may use Twitter to find story ideas.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if it's just use of keywords in your Twitter posts, or if it's hashtags that you want to use to kind of amplify, if you think it's something you'd want to speak on.
You can definitely use hashtags. Twitter is very hashtag driven. But I also think, to me, like the best strategy is for you to find out, here's the thing, you need to do your due diligence about where you want to be. So for example, if you know that you want to get picked up by the Washington Post, for example, you want to be interviewed by somebody at the Washington Post, figure out who covers your beat, like what journalist covers what your area of expertise is, and then start following them on Twitter, right? And then basically form a relationship with them on Twitter by retweeting their stuff, by responding to them, and when you do that, you'll start to form a relationship. And then when they eventually, they will likely follow you back. Sometimes in their media, in their little that area on Twitter where you can kind of put your little bio on Twitter, a lot of times people in the media industry will actually put their contact information there, or at minimum their personal website there, where you can get more information about them and figure out how you can connect with them if you want to pitch to them directly. But you can find all sorts of journalists on Twitter, all sorts of producers on Twitter, all sorts of editors. And the thing is for you to figure out what areas that what platforms you want to find out, you want to land on, find their people, you follow them, you sort of create that banter with them, and you will form a relationship, because it's much easier to get to a yes in a pitch if you are in some capacity, somewhat of a known quantity. It's not impossible to get a yes if they've never heard of you before, for example, but it certainly helps if they know you, know of your work. Like if you do start publishing things, make sure that you are tweeting it, and you're getting it out there, particularly if it's something that connects with that person's area of expertise. So for example, a lot of my stuff has to do with Black women's issues. It's another sort of area that I do a lot of work in, and Vanessa Williams is the main, not the Vanessa Williams, but another journalist named Vanessa Williams covers Black women's issues for the Washington Post. And so, you need to know who covers your beat, in essence, in the spaces where you want to be, in order for you to start to form those relationships, so that when they're looking for an expert to interview around those issues, you will be one of the people that come to mind. And you can also reach out to them to present ideas or pitch ideas to them about stories that you might want to have covered, and you can yourself then present yourself as the expert that they interview.
Dr. Avis, I'm so glad you mentioned that about Twitter, because there's a lot of people that say, oh, I have a Twitter account, but I'm not really active, or I'm not on Twitter. And people need to really realize that that's where everything is right now. Because
especially for the media, that's the preferred space.
Yes, and especially because you know, we're sitting there watching popcorn of, you know, when 45 is going to do something crazy or start another war on Twitter. So everything right now, and everybody's talking about, I call them the Twitter in chief or something like that, the Twitter chief and the whatever. But everybody's on Twitter. And so to have a presence, that's why I started, I started the whole thing about Twitter chats. I used to have a Twitter chat, right? And my Twitter chat was, you know, about it was called Cash Chat. My whole purpose was, I didn't want to be on Twitter, but my whole purpose was to get people that were in that space to know more about me. And I grew up to over 10,000 Twitter followers, mainly because of Twitter chat, of Cash Chat. Because then I built relationships with Experian, with all the credit reporting agencies, with different financial, you know, NerdWallet, all of them, and I had them on as guests. And so a lot of people found me and started following me on Twitter because of them, because they reshared and retweeted my stuff. So that gives you some validity too, when a major organization like Experian will retweet your stuff just out of the blue. That kind of gives you some fortitude there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. Different media platforms have different cultures. And, you know, Twitter is like 180 degrees different from Facebook, and definitely 180 degrees different from LinkedIn, but it has its purpose. It is the place, for example, that you can find big companies, big corporations, for example, because, for example, if you have a bad experience with a company and you blast them on Twitter, let me tell you, that is the best, that's the most efficient way to get them to fix it, okay?
So let me tell you, I've got more quick responses from major corporations on Twitter than putting something on Facebook.
Yeah, or LinkedIn even.
Or even LinkedIn. If I tag them on Twitter, oh, somebody's inboxing me, I'm sorry, how can I help you? They want to shut me up quick.
Exactly. And so it's very powerful because of that. And it also is powerful because this is really the preferred platform for people in the media. So if you want to be known, if you want to raise your profile among journalists, among producers, among editors, among other sort of media commentators, they are all on Twitter. That is really, that's the preferred space for them. And like I said before, it is, you can build relationships online these days, obviously, and especially right now, that's what most of us are going to have to be limited to. So I definitely would suggest that you start to invest a little bit more time in Twitter and really focus on those specific, see if you can target your follows around those issues that are aligned to your expertise. And that way you can easily become part of the conversation and give good information and good content that will really lift you up as an expert in that space. Awesome. One other thing I will say about Twitter is now they have that Twitter Live aspect, which is a little bit different from Periscope because, you know, Twitter originated Periscope prior to Facebook Live, and Facebook Live kind of copied it. But now they actually have like a Twitter Live. And so more and more people are starting to use actually short videos of them on Twitter as another way to sort of stand out from the crowd.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to let people know, hey, I'm about to do this, or I'm about to post something like this, and give them heads up. And then they'll know to go to your profile or go to follow you or follow a hashtag. So that's a great way to use that. Miss Jan has a question for you. Jan, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, thank you so much for doing.
We can't hear you, hon.
Oh, let me make sure my volume is up. Can you hear me now?
Not really. You sound really far away.
I cut my volume up, so I think I got it.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I am a little bashful. So two things. One would be about how to build that confidence and saying that I'm an expert in concealed carry, helping women protect themselves. And secondly, I don't know that I so much want to be on media per se, but I would love to have my clothes in some movies. I'm in Atlanta, and there is a lot of filming in our area. So how can I reach out to producers of film in that aspect?
Well, that's a completely sort of different genre. I will say from what, I really sort of sit in terms of my positioning in the media, I tend to not do that much work in sort of the movie industry. Although I do have, I have a colleague who I was going to invite to the Master Media Summit this year before, all this happened, but I'll definitely have her come speak to my community around, she's a writer on OWN Network. I would say that, but you bring up a larger good point. I mean, I suggested that because I thought that your customer were individual consumers. But it sounds like to me that you're saying that your preferred customer isn't necessarily, in essence, the mass market with regards to individual consumers, but you're seeing your customer as being movie studios who would purchase, right? So if no?
No, it is individuals. I have an online business, but I also sell at trade shows.
Okay. So why are you, and I think you definitely should pursue looking to get your movie, your fashions into movies as part of like a costume, I guess, design angle. But why are you averse to using media to get your what you do in front of, thousands more people than could be at any one trade show?
Confidence and being chicken. To be honest.
Well, let me just suggest this one thing to you, okay? I just, this doesn't have to be. Here's the thing: the way they would normally set this up is that it's probably not that different from how you operate within your trade shows. They will have you bring in a few models, and they will have them dressed in several of your outfits, and you'll just be off to the side talking to that person. It's not like you'll have to talk straight to camera. It's just that you'll be having a conversation with the person who is interviewing you, and you're going to be sort of giving feedback on the different fashions as the different models come out. And it'll be more like a girlfriend conversation that just happens to be taking place in a television studio. Does that make you feel better?
Yes, it does. And I was following another thing and did my Zoom background, but I'm not sure how to get me. So.
Well, I would just say
my face.
One last thing I would say, and I'm hoping that this will help you with the confidence thing, is that, I think what you do is so unique. It's a story in and of itself. That's why I suggested. I just think it's a very mediagenic story. And when you are doing something that's so unique, oftentimes it's not just the product that people are interested in, it's the person that's bringing that product to market that people are interested in. So there's a reason why people know Steve Jobs, for example, and not just Apple, right? There's a reason why people know, Mark Zuckerberg and not just Facebook. There is an added value to be able to personally brand yourself to what you're bringing to the market, because people ultimately not only form connections with things, I think even more deeply, they form connections with other people, right? And so for example, if I was interviewing you, I would be interested to even ask you what's the story behind you even coming up with this idea? What motivated you to do this? That sort of thing will make people that much more enthralled with your brand when they hear the story behind it and they're really able to put a face to it. So that's just my hope.
That's great. Before we go, we have one more question. This is from Patrina again. How do we find out who covers our beat for various publications or various networks?
Right. So publications is the easiest way to find that out. Oh, networks not too bad either. But publications are very, very easy because it's just a matter of reading that publication, right? Or Googling that publication and your topic, and then seeing what comes up and seeing who is writing those stories. Like I gave the example of Washington Post. That's a particularly easy platform to find contact information, because it must be their policy that basically at the end of their stories, they tend to have the email of their journalists. So you can directly connect with their journalists around those issues that are most, that interest you most. With television, sometimes it might take a little bit more due diligence. But hey, I mean, you can link, but surprisingly to folks, LinkedIn is even a space you can look at to find that out. Paying attention to maybe doing some hashtags on Twitter where you're putting in hashtags that connect to that platform, and then seeing the tweets that come up. Oftentimes you will see the people that are tweeting and retweeting information with that hashtags. It's not just the general public, it's the producers that are pushing stories out that they've just covered on that show. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's just a little due diligence that you need to do to find out who to target your information to, but trust and believe, a lot of it's like hiding in plain sight. You just have to look for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Avis. You mentioned that you have training that's coming up. Tell us about that and how people can sign up for that.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about it. Girl, I've been working.
You always working. Let me tell you. I see you.
Working. Me and my team have put so much effort into this. I'm so super excited and proud about it. It is called the Perfect Media Pitch Masterclass, and it will start next Monday, April 6th. It's going to be a multi-day learning event where every day we're going to get together and piece by piece by piece by piece, you're going to construct your perfect pitch that you can then use to pitch to whatever platform that you want to. And I'm doing this really right now because I just really feel like this, as I mentioned at the very beginning, that this is a very rare window of opportunity where you will literally have, you know, the undivided attention of a nation right now, given that most of us are sequestered in our homes. You know, if you think about what happened with D Nice the other day, you know, the fact that he was able to attract 150,000 people onto his live stream was because everybody was stuck at home. You know, I love D Nice, but good Lord, I hadn't thought about D Nice in like 20, 30 years.
Right.
So it's the fact that we're all here together sharing this experience, and people are all looking for something to do. So, you know, for me, particularly at a moment where we are about to experience, and we're starting to experience economic disruptions, it's very important to me that entrepreneurs get creative about how to make sure that their businesses are fortified for what we're about to experience. And to me, if people don't know who you are, they're not going to buy from you. And this is one of the best ways that you can take advantage of this window of opportunity to get your business in front of millions, so that you can get leads for your business that you can ultimately turn into customers and revenue for your business, so that this particular disruption that we're about to experience does not hurt your business's opportunity to survive.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that was perfect. You know, that was a soundbite right there. So if you all take lessons from her, she just did a soundbite for why you need to join her class. How can people, again, sign up for this class?
Yeah, so it's very easy. Just go to perfectmediapitch.com. That's perfectmediapitch.com.
Wonderful. And how can we follow you on social media or your website? How can we stay in touch? Especially if we need coaching or we want to work with you.
Absolutely. So definitely go to perfectmediapitch.com, and you will get on my email list also when you sign up for that class. So you'll be able to stay in contact with me. On Facebook, I'm Avis Jones-DeWeever. On Twitter, I'm a little bit more. Okay. So on Twitter, my handle, I'm a little bit more. So my handle there is Sista, SISTAH Scholar. And I think, you know, the easiest website that I like to give people, and this is another media tip for you guys. I do have a personally branded website that's avisjonesdeweever.com, but oftentimes people don't know how to spell. I mean, DeWeever, you can easily misspell that because, you know, most people assume that the Weaver part is WEAVER, like a weaver, but it's actually WEEVER. So I have another website that I send people to when I'm in media situations that is easier to spell and easier to remember. So what I send people is to blackwomenlead.com. So you can go to blackwomenlead.com, find out more about me, find out more about my book, and be able to connect with me there as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Avis. You know I love you, and I talk about you all the time. And, I know in 2020, we're going to be working again together,
Yeah.
That's just speak it into existence,
Yes.
and
Well,
tell
I
us.
mean, I love you back.
Huh? What'd you say?
I said, I love you back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And this is so great for me because I used to be her stalker. Yeah. I stalked her for years. I watched her every day on Roland Martin. And then I started stalking her on LinkedIn, and then it became Facebook, and then it was Twitter. And then I finally reached out to you, and I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to you. I don't have groupie moments, but I have one with you. And now she's my sister. I thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here, and it's wonderful to be introduced to your community. Thanks for having me.